All right, so this is going to be another movie review. This one's called Frenzy, 1972. This is going to be another Hitchcock flick, giving it 5 out of 5 stars. I love the movie poster from the Master of Shock, a shocking masterpiece. Hitchcock's Frenzy. All right. What a great film this was. This has to be right up there with Rope in terms of quality. I just thought it was a little too long. But lots of plot twists and a stunning, masterful rape scene in this one. Tons of nudity. Can you believe it? You get tons of TNA in this one. What is there not to like about this? And the guy who's the Thai murderer, he's he looks like a redheaded John Pertwee. So Doctor Who is the Thai murderer in this one. I can't read the small print on the movie poster, but let's dive into this. Where did Adrian go? He disappeared again. Frenzy is a 1972 British thriller film directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It is the penultimate feature film of his extensive career. The screenplay by Anthony Schaeffer was based on the 1966 novel Goodbye Piccadilly, Farewell Leicester Square by Arthur Laburn. The film stars John Finch, who looks like John Pertwee wearing a redhead wig, Alec Duncan McGowan, and John Barry Foster. I'm sorry. I misspoke. John Finch is not the Thai killer. It's Barry Foster. John Finch is the kind of John Nicholas Finch is the kind of loser divorce guy, drunk, unemployed, down on his luck in 1972. It's not a good time to be unemployed in 1972, let me tell you. And it also features Billy Whitelaw, Anna Massey, Barbara Leigh Hunt, Bernard Cribbins, and Vivian Merchant. The original score was composed by Ron Goodwin. I don't know any of these actors. John Finch might be the only one that I've ever seen, and I'm too lazy to look him up. The plot centers on a serial killer in contemporary London and the ex-RAF serviceman he implicates. In a very early scene, there's dialogue that mentions 2 actual London serial murder cases, the Christie murders in the 1940s to 1950s, and the Jack the Ripper murders in 1888. Excuse me. Frenzy was the third and final film that Hitchcock made in Britain after he moved to Hollywood in 1939. The other 2 were Under Capricorn in 1949 and Stage Fright in 1950. The last film he made in Britain before his move to the United States was Jamaica in 1939. Frenzy was the only Hitchcock film given an R rating during its initial release. Frenzy was screened at the 1972 Cannes Film Festival, but it was not entered into the main competition. Some critics, such as Raymond Fowrie, author of Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy, the last masterpiece. Consider Frenzy the last great Hitchcock film and a return to form after his two previous works, Topaz and Torn Curtain. By the way, I've got Torn Curtain at number 3 on my list and Topaz number 6 on my list. Coincidence? Nah. Former RAF squadron leader Richard Blaney is fired from his job as a barman in a pub near Covent Garden, which no longer exists, by the way. He laments his loss with his friend Bob Rusk, Doctor Who runs a fruit and vegetable stall in Covent Garden, which no longer exists. Rusk consoles Doctor Who, and Rusk gives a tip on Doctor Who consoles Blaney. I got it backwards. Doctor Who consoles Blaney, and Doctor Who gives a tip on a forthcoming horse race, but Blaney has no money to bet. He visits his ex-wife Brenda, who runs a successful matchmaking agency, and he complains loudly about his situation. Yeah. If I had divorced D-cup Brenda with the very tiny areolas, I would be upset too. They briefly, that's actually a murder motive right there. Contrary to what the movie says. They briefly argue, but she invites him to dinner. Now, only my first wife would do that. My second wife, not so much. Broke, Blaney ends up spending the night at a Salvation Army shelter where he discovers that Brenda has slipped money into his coat pocket. What is Brenda doing? He should just gone back to her and said, look, I want to remarry you. Let's see if we can make this work. Anyways. Distributed by Universal Pictures, release date June 21st, 1972. Running time, a very long 116 minutes. But the ending is worth the wait, trust me. Country UK, language English, budget of $2 million and box office of $12.6 million. I'd say it was a box office hit. On the following day, Rusk, whom the agency had turned away because of his creepy sexual proclivities, they don't like Doctor Who registering with the dating service. Finding her alone, he rapes her. And he keeps saying, lovely, lovely, while he's strangling her with a necktie, revealing that he is the serial killer whom the newspapers have dubbed the necktie murderer. So the lady that washed up on the Thames while the lame 70s politician was talking about fighting pollution, we learned that Doctor Who is responsible. After Rusk leaves, Blaney arrives hoping to talk to Brenda again, but he finds her office locked. Brenda's secretary, returning from lunch, sees Blaney leaving. When the murder is discovered, Blaney becomes the prime suspect. Not because they have any actual evidence, but because they don't have another suspect. So here we have Scotland Yard messing up, but at least they had the foresight to correct themselves. When they jailed the wrong guy, he's screaming and yelling that Doctor Who is responsible, and Scotland Yard actually listens to what he's saying at the end of the movie. That's why this movie is so long. Blaney meets up with Babs Milligan, another hot-looking British babe, his former pub co-worker. You get to see her arse, or maybe it's a body double. And Blaney convinces her that he is innocent. The two stay at a hotel where they make love, off screen, of course, then narrowly dodge the police. They appeal to one of Blaney's RAF buddies for help, but the man's wife refuses to harbor a fugitive, especially after Babs gets murdered and dumped in the potato truck with her leg falling out of the potato bag. They appeal to one of Blaney persuades Babs to fetch his belongings from the pub so he can flee. While there, Babs turns into Rusk, who offers to let her use his flat for the night. Don't trust Doctor Who. Because Doctor Who always says, you're really my kind of woman, when he's alone with a woman in an unsafe spot, a little alley in London. After taking Babs there, he rapes and murders her, off screen, of course. He hides her body in a potato sack and late that night stows in the back of a lorry hauling potatoes. So you got potatoes and Babs mixed together. I don't think that rigor mortis body tastes good with potatoes, but I could be wrong. Back in his room, Rusk discovers that his distinctive jeweled tie pin with the initial R is missing. Oh, Doctor Who lost his tie pin. And he realizes that Babs must have torn it off while he was strangling her. Great flashback scene. Total panic. Knowing the tie pin will incriminate him, Russ goes to retrieve it. But the lorry starts off on its journey while he is still inside. In spite of the bumpy ride, he retrieves the pin that is still clutched in Babs' hands. He breaks her fingers. Disheveled and covered in potato dust, he gets out. Doctor Who gets out at the roadside cafe, then returns to his Covent Garden flat. When Babs' body is discovered, Blaney is suspected of her murder as well as Brenda. Again, no proof. Just he's the only guy who could have done it, who had a grudge against her. Blaney, unaware that Rusk is the actual murderer, turns to him for help. Never go to Doctor Who for help. He's the tie murderer. Rusk offers to hide Blaney at his flat and then tips off the police, double crosses his friend. Not only that, but he plants evidence using the Babs belongings, and he puts it in his bag. In the fate, I don't know how they plan this kind of stuff, but everything seems to go wrong for Blaney in this movie until the end. And even then, you think, oh no, he's going back to jail. In the face of this treachery, Blaney realizes that Musk must be the murderer. At the trial, the jury finds Blaney guilty, even though there's no evidence that he is. So we have a stupid jury, a stupid Scotland Yard, a stupid politician in the beginning. This movie is brutal. During the trial and while being led away to prison, Blaney loudly protests that he is innocent, that Rusk is the real killer. He's screaming and yelling at the judge. Chief Inspector Oxford rediscovers the evidence and he quietly investigates Rusk. Oh, he's starting to have second thoughts after listening to Blaney yell and scream. He discusses the case with his wife while trying to avoid eating the unappetizing food she has learned to prepare in an exotic cooking course. This is dark humor from Alfred Hitchcock. It's great. She she manages to cook pig feet and little tiny quail and things like this. And her husband does not like it. He compares it to jail food, and then she chugs a margarita and she runs off. Blaney, now in prison, vows to escape and avenge himself on Rusk. We have a man on a mission. He's going after Doctor Who. He deliberately injures himself by falling down the stairs, causing a serious-looking wound. His head is bleeding. I don't know if he cracked his skull or what's going on. And he is taken to the hospital where his fellow inmate patients help him escape. I guess the blood clot dried up and he's okay. He goes to Rusk's flat. Doctor Who is not there, but Blaney, thinking that Doctor Who is sleeping, hits the person on the head. It is revealed that that was not Rusk, but a woman already dead in Rusk's bed, strangled with Doctor Who's necktie. All right. So this lady has got a huge areola. And she got a tie around her neck. And the camera is pointing at her for 5 minutes. I could have sworn she was nude for 5 minutes. Ooh, wow. Automatic 5 out of 5 stars. I could believe it. Nudity of the 60s movie. Adrian is back. Great movie of the time. Wow, Doctor Who. I wish it was Tom Baker. No, it's more like John Pertwee in the in a redhead wig. Lovely, lovely, not good. Where's the tardies? I love cooks with no underwear. All right. So Adrian's familiar with this movie. I'm not surprised though. He knows these kind of movies anyway. Adrian's in the chat room in case you're wondering who's chatting. Blaney, now in prison. All right. Inspector Oxford, who has anticipated that Blaney would go after Doctor Who, arrives to find Blaney with the dead woman. Again, you think he's being framed. Just as Blaney begins to protest his innocence, the two hear a loud banging noise coming from the stairwell. Doctor Who has come to bring the place where he's going to dispose of the dead body. Rusk enters. Doctor Who is here, dragging a large trunk into the flat, and he is confronted by Blaney and Oxford. What a great film. Unbelievable. One of Hitchcock's best, finest masterpieces. As the great movie poster states, it is definitely in his top 5, in my opinion. Right up there with Rope, Vertigo. I'd say it's in his top 3. Alfred Hitchcock's cameo appearance can be seen 3 minutes into the film in the center of a crowd scene wearing a bowler hat, Teaser trailers show a Hitchcock like dummy floating in the River Thames, and Hitchcock introducing the audience to Covent Garden via the fourth wall. I posted the link to the trailer in the description. It's a funny trailer. Hitchcock is great with his dark humor. Michael Caine was Hitchcock's first choice for the role of Rusk, the main antagonist. But as Caine later said, he offered me a part of a sadist who murdered women, and I won't play that. I have a sort of moral thing, and I refused to play it, and he never spoke to me again. Well, that's an understandable situation. So they got Doctor Who instead of Michael Caine. Barry Foster was cast after Hitchcock saw him in Twisted Nerve, which featured Frenzy co-star Billy Whitelaw. I'll have to check out Twisted Nerve. Vanessa Redgrave reportedly turned down the role of Brenda, and Deep Red's David Hemmings, who had co-starred with Redgrave and Blow Up, was considered to play Blaney. Helen Mirren, who later in life played Hitchcock's wife, Alma Reville in Hitchcock, met with the director to discuss the role of Babs Milligan. I didn't like Hitchcock very much, Mirren said years later, and he didn't like me very much either. I didn't really want to be in the movie. Too bad. All these people missed out. And we got Doctor Who and other obscure English actors. But I do want to see Twisted Nerve now. Deep Red is an awesome film. One of Dario Argento's best. Top 3, I'd say. After a pair of unsuccessful films depicting political intrigue and espionage, Hitchcock returned to the murder genre with this film. We like Hitchcock murder genre. The narrative makes use of the familiar Hitchcock theme of an innocent man overwhelmed by circumstantial evidence and wrongly assumed to be guilty. Remember Young and Innocent? It's like that. Hitchcock announced the project in March 1968. Hitchcock approached Vladimir Nabokov to write the script, but the author turned him down because he was busy on a book. He then hired Anthony Schaefer. It will be done comedically, said Hitchcock. The film starred relatively newcomers in the lead roles. I prefer a fresh face, he said. Good decision. Barry Foster has said that in order to prepare for his role, he was asked by Hitchcock to study 2 books about Neville Heath, an English double murderer who would often pass himself off as an officer in the RAF. 3 Henrietta Street in Covent Garden was the flat of the necktie strangler Robert Rusk, a.k.a. Doctor Who. Filming began in July 1971. Hitchcock shot Frenzy in London after many years making films in the United States. The film opens with a sweeping shot along the Thames to Tower Bridge, and while the interior scenes were filmed at Pinewood Studios, much of the location filming was done in and around Covent Garden, and it was an homage to the London of Hitchcock's childhood. The son of a Covent Garden merchant himself, Hitchcock filmed several key scenes showing the area as the working produce market. It was aware that the area's days as a market were numbered. Hitchcock wanted to record the area as he remembered it. According to the making of feature on the DVD, an elderly man who remembered Hitchcock's father as a dealer in the vegetable market came to visit the set during the filming and was treated to lunch by the director. Number 31, Ensamore Gardens Mews was used as the home of Brenda Margaret Blaney during the filming of Frenzy. During the shooting of the film, Hitchcock's wife and longtime collaborator, Alma, had a stroke. As a result, some sequences were shot without Hitchcock on set so that he could tend to his wife. The film was the first Hitchcock film to have nudity, with the arguable exception of the shower scene in Psycho. I didn't see any pink nipples in Psycho. The nude scenes used body doubles in place of Barbara Lee Hunt and Anna Massey. The nude scene, which shows the first victim being raped and strangled, was called by Donald Spada one of the most repellent examples of a detailed murder in the history of film. Right on. That's my kind of scene. There are a number of classic Hitchcock set pieces in the film, particularly the long tracking shot down the stairs when Babs is murdered. The camera moves down the stairs out of the doorway with a rather clever edit just after the camera exits the door, which marks where the scene moves from the studio to the location footage and across the street where the usual activity in the market district goes on, with patrons unaware that a murder is occurring in the building. They're just going about their business, shuffling around a bunch of fruits and vegetables. A second sequence set in the back of a delivery truck full of potatoes increases the suspense as the murderer, Rusk, aka Doctor Who, attempts to retrieve his tie pin from the corpse of Babs by breaking her fingers. Rusk struggles with the hand and has to break the fingers of the corpse in order to retrieve his tie pin and try to escape unseen from the truck. But he was seen because he had to brush off his suit at the local breakfast joint, I guess you call it, open all night, maybe. The part of London shown in the film still exists more or less intact, but the fruit and vegetable market no longer operates from that site, having relocated in 1974. So Hitchcock got there right in the nick of time, 2 years before they relocated. The buildings seen in the film are now occupied by banks and legal offices, restaurants, and nightclubs. Sounds like Haight Street in San Francisco, such as Henrietta Street, where Rusk lived, Doctor Who, and Babs met her untimely demise. Oxford Street, which had the back alley, Dryden Chambers, now demolished, leading to Brenda Blaney's matrimonial agency, is the busiest shopping area in Britain. Nell of Old Drury, which is a public house where the doctor and solicitor had their frank plot assisting discussion on sex killers, is still a thriving bar. The lanes where merchants and workers once carried their produce, as seen in the film, are now occupied by tourists and street performers. Adrian says, thanks for the background on the film. Adrian's been waiting for this review. Anyways, in May 29, 1972, letter to the editor of the Times, novelist LeBurn said he found Hitchcock's production and Schaeffer's adaptation of his book appalling, concluding, finally, I wish to disassociate myself with Mr. Schaeffer's grotesque misrepresentation of Scotland Yard offices. Yeah, they're completely incompetent, but they do redeem themselves at the end. Suddenly a light bulb comes off and says, hey, maybe I did sentence the wrong guy. Henry Mancini was originally hired as the film's composer. If the same film was made 10 years ago, it would have had twice the amount of music in it, he said. His opening theme was written in Bach-ian organ andate, opening in D minor for organ and an orchestra of strings and brass, and it was intended to express the formality of the gray London landmarks, but Hitchcock thought it sounded too much like Bernard Herrmann's scores. According to Mancini, Hitchcock came to the recording session, listened a while, and said, "Look, if I want Herrmann, I'd ask for Herrmann." After an enigmatic behind the scenes melodrama, the composer was fired. He never understood the experience, insisting that his score sounded nothing like Herrmann's work. Mancini had to pay all transportation and accommodation costs himself. In his autobiography, Mancini reports that the discussions between himself and Hitchcock seemed clear, and he thought he understood what was wanted, but he was replaced and he flew back home to Hollywood. The irony was that Mancini was being second guessed for being too dark and symphonic after having been criticized for being too light before. Mancini's experience with Frenzy was a painful topic for the composer for years to come. Hitchcock then hired composer Ron Goodwin to write the score after being impressed with some of his earlier work. He had Goodwin rescore the opening titles in the style of London Travelogue. The director had heard his score for the Peter Sellers sketch Balham, Gateway to the South. Goodwin's music had a lighter tone in the opening scenes and scenes featuring London scenery, while there were darker undertones in certain other scenes. In 2023, Quartet Records issued a soundtrack album featuring both the Goodwin score and the unused Mancini score. Now, that I would like to get my hands on. Frenzy received positive reviews from critics. Vincent Canby of the New York Times called it a passionately entertaining film with a marvelously funny script and a superb cast. He put it on his year-end list of the 10 best films of 1972. Yeah, I'd say it was one of the 10 best of 72. Variety also posted a rave review declaring ingeniously fresh storytelling and ideas stamped with the same mischievous, audacious, and often outrageous mixture of humor and suspense that first made him and later sustained him, make the Universal release one of Hitchcock's major achievements. Roger Ebert gave the film his highest grade of 4 stars, calling it a return to old forms by the master of suspense, whose newer forms have pleased movie critics but not his public. This is the kind of thriller Hitchcock was making in the 40s, i.e. Rope, filled with macabre details, incongruous humor, and the desperation of a man convicted of a crime he didn't commit. Penelope Gilead of The New Yorker wrote of Hitchcock that we are nearly back in the days of his great English films, adding, he is lucky to have been able to draw on Anthony Schaeffer to do Frenzy's sly screenplay, not to speak of a cast of first-rate, well-acquainted actors pretty much unknown outside of England, so that audiences have no preconceptions about who are the stars and therefore unkillable. Kevin Thomas of the Los Angeles Times called the film Alfred Hitchcock's best picture in years, with all the marks of a work by a master of his craft and his most assured. Time printed a very positive review of the film. In case there was any doubt, back in the dim days of Marnie and Topaz, Hitchcock is still in fine form. Frenzy is the dazzling proof. It is not at the level of his greatest work. Yes, it is. But it is smooth and shrewd and dexterous, a reminder that anyone who makes a suspense film is still an apprentice to this old master. In its 2012 review, The Guardian called Frenzy a complex and gripping thriller, praising the film as a rich tapestry of suspense and a masterpiece. Some reviewers were mixed. Gary Arnold of the Washington Post wrote that the film has a promising opening sequence and a witty curtain line, but the material in between is decidedly pedestrian. The reviewers who've been hailing Frenzy as a new classic and the triumphant return of the master of suspense are, to put it kindly, exaggerating the occasion. If this picture had been made by anyone else, it would be described justly as a mildly diverting attempt to imitate Hitchcock. I'm not sure how Hitchcock can imitate Hitchcock, but okay. The monthly film bulletin was unsure what to make of the picture, noting an old fashioned air to it that seemed to suggest that Hitchcock's return to England signaled a regression to an almost pre war style of filmmaking. It concluded, for all its apparent awkwardness of script and characterization, John Finch especially can make little of Schaefer's anemically written hero. There is enough in Frenzy to suggest that after the routine critical dismissals, it will repay serious assessment. So I guess you can't have a hero who's down on his luck in the early 70s. I think people can relate to that because a lot of them were in similar situations, going through divorce, working odd jobs, having a jerk for a boss, saying "take this job and shove it," which was an actual title of a song back in the 70s. Take this job and shove it. Having having an affair with your former coworker. I mean, this is the early 70s. What do you expect? Frenzy ranked 14th on Variety's list of big rental films of 1972. With rentals of $6.3 million in the United States and Canada, the film was the subject of a 2012 book, Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy, the last masterpiece by Robert Forey. Frenzy holds a whopping 91% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 44 reviews. The critical consensus reads, marking Alfred Hitchcock's return to England and his first foray into viscerally explicit carnage, Frenzy finds the master of horror regaining his grip on the audience's pulse and making their blood run cold. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 92 out of 100 based on 15 critics, indicating universal acclaim. A whopping 92 out of 100 on Metacritic. Golden Globe Awards, Best Motion Picture Drama, Alfred Hitchcock nominated. Best Director, Alfred Hitchcock nominated. Best Screenplay, Anthony Schaefer nominated. Best Original Score, Ron Goodwin nominated. And now we'll go digging some more. Oh, Adrian's actually seen a movie, Take This Job and Shove It. We'll look it up along with that other movie that I was going to look up. Was it Twitched? All right. From the master of shock and shocking masterpiece. The trailer is got to be the best trailer that I've ever seen in my whole human life. And I've seen some good ones. I'm thinking of The Abominable Dr. Phibes. All right. Gets a whopping, all right, Frenzy 1972. Here we go. Let's see if we can Well, I can't really see the smaller writing on the movie poster, but that movie poster is a must have for movie poster collectors. Frenzy 1972 rated R, 1 hour 56 minutes. It's a whopping 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 51,000 ratings. A serial murderer is strangling women with a necktie. The London police have a suspect, but he is the wrong man. It's Doctor Who. Barry Foster, aka John Pertwee. All right, here's a somewhat lower review from J. Haggard Jr., who gives it an 8 out of 10. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. Let's see what A. Haggard Jr. says about this. Well, it's not letting me click on it, so maybe not. More like this family plot. Topaz, Marnie, and Torn Curtain. I think I've seen Family Plot. Marnie was not a good film. I still have yet to see Topaz and Torn Curtain. Alfred Hitchcock's daughter, Patricia Hitchcock, found this movie so disturbing that she would not allow her children to see it for many years. That's funny. The daughter is more conservative than the father. When examining the murder scene at the marriage bureau, a police officer brings the victim's handbag out to Inspector Oxford, who quickly holds it with a handkerchief to keep his fingerprints. Oh, here we go. All right. Never mind. We're on the J. Haggard Jr. review of Frenzy, 8 out of 10. The title is Exceptionist Hitchcock Thriller on the IMDb review dated June 25th, 2000. Frenzy was Alfred Hitchcock's next to last film, and though it's not a great classic like Psycho and North by Northwest, who said it was, it's still a very good movie. I'd say it's better than Psycho and North by Northwest. After making mostly U.S. movies for 4 decades, Hitchcock returned to his native Britain to make Frenzy. 4 decades? Really? No, that doesn't sound right. It's about a series of murders that's devastating London. These murders have 2 things in common. 1, the victims are all women. And 2, they're all raped and then strangled with a necktie. When the marriage counselor is murdered this way, the police suspect the woman's ex-husband is the culprit. But actually, the husband is innocent, and he is forced to hide out from the cops. Frenzy has all the usual Hitchcock elements: thrill, suspense, comedy, and Hitchcock's cameo appearance. The 2 best scenes in the movie are the hilarious moments when the police inspector who's heading up the investigation of the necktie murders is served up 2 gourmet dinners by his wife. These scenes are very funny. The comic moments is what gives Frenzy an edge over Hitchcock's previous film, Topaz. Plus, it's a more entertaining thriller. 3 out of 4 stars, which is even a lower 7.5 out of 10. But J. Haggard Jr. is rounding up. So, review and somewhat misleading review. if not outright wrong. Hitchcock didn't direct for 4 decades in the US, unless I lost my ability to count. Um, all right, let's see what we got here. When examining the murder scene at the marriage bureau, a police officer brings the victim's handbag out to Inspector Oxford, who correctly holds it with a handkerchief to keep his fingerprints from contaminating the evidence. He then sticks his ungloved hand inside and feels around, thus contaminating it with his own fingerprints. I was wondering about fingerprints in this movie. They should have been able to solve the crime with correct fingerprinting techniques. But this is a movie, so you have to suspend disbelief quite a bit in this one. Chief Inspector Oxford, Mr. Rusk, you're not wearing a tie. Robert Rusk is speechless for a moment. Robert Rusk, aka Doctor Who, says, and then he drops the trunk that he just dragged around into the room. And I just spoiled the ending of the movie. The Universal Pictures logo does not appear in this film. The original UK cinema and initial 1989 CIC video releases were cut by 19 seconds by the BBFC to remove shots of underwear removal and close-ups of neck strangling from the murder scene. The cuts were restored in all later Universal video and DVD releases. This was featured in the Dick Cavett show Alfred Hitchcock, 1972. Soundtracks, poem, uncredited, music by Zdeněk Filbic, arranged by Ron Goodwin. Release date June 21st, 1972 in the United States. Country of origin UK. Language English, also known as Franesi. Filming locations: the Globe Pub, Bow Street, Covent Garden, London, England, UK, pub where Blaney, Babs, and Forsyth work. Production company Alfred J. Hitchcock Productions. Box office $2 million estimated. Gross worldwide $4,940. That doesn't sound right. Anyways, highly recommended. Check it out. A great Hitchcock film. I'll look up Take This Job and Shove It. And what was the other one? So Adrian finally came up with a movie recommendation. He wants me to look it up. Okay. Twisted Nerve is the other one with Barry Foster. So I'm going to look up Twisted Nerve and Take This Job and Shove It. And I'm going to take a nap, wake up, and add some more Ned Beatty flicks. I'll try to get to my next movie, I Buried the Living, 1958, on Monday. And that's the plan. Laters.